What's up gamers, Coco Mojo here. Resto Druids are looking really good going into 9.2 for both Mythic Plus and Raid, and in this video I'll go over what you'll need to decide if they're the right class for you to main in this patch. So starting off, Resto Druid got a bunch of buffs. There's a bunch of straight aura buffs across the board for both damage and healing. There was even an extra buff to Life Bloom, making it do more healing from the heal over time component and the bloom component, so it's going to make tank healing feel even better than before. Their damage is looking pretty good too. They got that aura buff to all of their dots, so just passively dotting things is going to work better than before. And then if you can get into cat form and apply extra dots to mobs, then you're going to be in pretty good shape for doing priority damage in keys. Resto Druid has also felt really good to play pretty much throughout all of Shadowlands, but especially in 9.15 and going into 9.2. Your core rotation is all instant casts, and so it feels very mobile and very fluid. Resto Druid scales very well with Haste. The global cooldown reduction makes spreading hots on your team very, very fluid, and the extra haste also helps the hot tick rate, which is going to improve your HPS, and it's also going to help your dot tick rates and everything about your kit. It does very strong tank healing and party healing. It has what might be the best external in the game with Iron Bark on a fairly short cooldown. It's very good for Mythic Plus. And with Soul of the Forest and Wild Growth, you can quickly spread strong hots on your whole team and do some really good party healing. They're also very durable. They have a very short personal defensive cooldown in Bark Skin. They can soak mechanics with Bear Form, especially with the Conduit that gives you extra HP for a few seconds when you first go into Bear Form. And the Frenzied Regen Conduit is actually overpowered. This thing does quite a lot of healing if you find yourself taking some avoidable damage or you're soaking unavoidable mechanics. The tier set is looking quite good as well, especially for Raid. The ability to run the Convoke Legendary and Soul of the Forest talent instead of Tree will be really strong. You're going to be able to get Tree procs from your 4-set bonus for every Convoke, and that's going to feel really good. And the tier set is also really quite good for Mythic Plus. I mean, you're already going to be pressing Swiftmend to get Soul of the Forest when you want to do group healing, and so every third Swiftmend that you cast is going to be giving you Tree of Life, so you're going to be doing some pretty big healing with those procs. Double legendaries also work out quite well for Druids. All of the Covenant legendaries are actually pretty good, and there's some really good second legendary combos that you could use for different situations or playstyles. The Verdant Infusion legendary is going to make a really, really strong tank healing build. You're going to be able to keep your tank fully hotted up and have something like 90% uptime on Cenarian Ward. So your tanks are going to be really durable, like maybe outrageously durable in keys. This is going to enable your tanks to pull a little bigger than usual because they're going to be so sturdy. And VI also saves you a lot of global cooldowns, so you'll be able to spend those GCDs on healing your other teammates or doing damage. The Draft of Deep Focus legendary is also looking quite strong. This is great for a single target or priority damage. This is probably going to pair best with Necrolord for sustained boss DPS, but it could be pretty good for Night Fae as well. You'll be able to do some decent burst damage on a single target every minute. And then another option that seems like it could be quite good is the Night Fae and Oath of the Elder Druid legendary combination. Being able to use this in Moonkin form for some burst AoE or for pretty strong single target damage as well will be a fun and good combo. And if you're playing Balance Affinity, then you'll get access to Typhoon as well, which is great for helping your tank kite or dealing with Sanguine and things along those lines. Druids definitely have some clear strengths and weaknesses. Some of the strengths are that they always have good healing, both for tanks and the party. They're not super cooldown reliant. You basically just always have good healing. You also have some pretty strong cooldowns in Flourish, and Tranquility is okay as well, but really the main HPS cooldown that you have is going to be Flourish. And when you have everyone set up with hots and you press Flourish, you do just stupid amounts of healing. It's a really strong button, and it feels really satisfying to press as well. Watching all those hots get extended and then seeing people's HP bars fill up is really satisfying. Druids also have a ton of great utility, especially for Mythic Plus, but also in a rated environment as well. I mentioned before that they have the best external in the game with Iron Bark. This is going to make your tanks even more durable than they already are. You have some good crowd control with Ursul's Vortex and Typhoon if you're talented in the Balance Affinity. These are going to be helpful for mobs like the jumping mobs in Theater of Pain, or if your tank needs to kite on like a raging or bolstering week. It's really versatile spells there. Druids also bring a Soothe. There's tons of mobs that need Soothes in Shadowlands, and so having that Soothe always available is a really, really strong piece of utility. It can enable some pulls like pulling the Bloodhorn onto the first boss of Theater, for instance, and even soothing Decia after she enrages at 40% HP, so you don't have to deal with kiting her. It's a huge time save in that dungeon. And of course B-Res, being able to have a natural B-Res, and with the Finesse Conduit that gives a really strong food buff after you B-Res, it's like your teammate never died, kind of. One of the bigger weaknesses of Druid, especially for newer Druid players, is that their healing is almost entirely predictive, with the only exception being Swift Mend and Nature Swiftness for some spot healing. And you can also use Convoke for some instant party healing. But it very much relies on predicting when your team is going to take damage and setting up all of your HOTS to keep their HP bars filled up, as opposed to pressing buttons to fill HP bars once they're down. You're not going to be able to really react to damage quite as well as other healers, so you want to be knowing what damage is going to be hitting your team pretty soon and getting your team set up to survive it. I actually think this makes for a really interesting playstyle because it really encourages you to learn as much as you can about the dungeon mechanics. One of the nice side effects about this is that you have a great understanding of all the dungeon mechanics for your alts as well, so if you want to play a DPS or a tank, you'll know what damage is coming and what to expect and possibly how to avoid it. One of their other weaknesses is that their damage is lower than Shaman. Resto Shaman DPS is just outrageously good, and Resto Druids just won't do as much damage as Resto Shamans if you compare two equal skilled players in the same situation. Shaman AoE DPS is also really easy to do. You're just dropping your Vesper Totem and spamming Chain Lightnings, and if you compare that to juggling multiple dots while maintaining HOTS on your team as a Resto Druid, it really doesn't compare. Resto Druid's single target DPS may be competitive with Resto Shaman though, and that single target DPS is really valuable. That's what kills bosses and high HP mobs in trash packs, and it is definitely a great way to speed up your runs, is to do priority damage. One of the other great things about Druid is that you can fill all of your roles with your other specs, and so Guardian is looking to be one of the best tanks for Mythic Plus. It feels really strong to play and is a great introductory tank since its rotation is fairly straightforward. Boomy is also looking pretty good. They're pretty much always strong in Raid, and they could be pretty good in Mythic Plus as well when we get access to double legendaries and tier sets. Also, Feral exists, and unfortunately got nerfed pretty hard on PTR. It was looking to be actually pretty good, and now it's not looking all that great, but it's definitely a fun spec to play, and is definitely good enough in the right hands to do fairly high keys. So given all of this, if Druid is interesting to you at all, then I think it could be a great class to main in 9.2. It's a really fun healer with lots of viable builds. It's always strong, both in terms of HPS and dealing solid damage and survivability. Tracking all of the HOTS on your team and predicting when damage will be dealt is a really engaging playstyle and keeps you on your toes. They have loads of useful utility that can enable your team to do some fun things in keys. And all of your off-specs are also great. They're pretty much all fun to play, and a couple of them are looking to be really strong as well in Mythic Plus and Raid. So what do you think? Are you excited about maining Resto Druid in 9.2? Let me know in the comments below or in the Discord. Feel free to ask any questions as well. I'm going to be playing a lot of Resto Druid in 9.2, so keep an eye out for new videos, and good luck out there.